Captain Tiberius Voss had one piece of advice for his crew as they boarded the sled hurtling toward the comet's icy surface. Try not to die. I've heard it's a real drag. The comet, affectionately dubbed Rocky the Deathball by some long-dead astronomer with a poor sense of humor, was nothing to look at, much like Voss himself if you asked his ex-wife. But it was the kind of place where secrets were buried, and humanity's future might just be hidden under a few billion tons of ice and cosmic regret. Voss cracked his knuckles, a habit that drove his second-in-command, Lieutenant Leela Reyes, to the brink of homicide. "You know, Captain, if you keep doing that, your fingers will explode," she muttered, adjusting her helmet. "If my fingers don't explode, I might just do it myself to end this endless cycle of disappointment," Voss replied, grinning. His teeth were a little too white, like he'd borrowed them from a toothpaste ad. The sled shuddered as it broke through the comet's meager atmosphere, if you could call a few particles of frozen dread an atmosphere. The onboard AI, nicknamed Blinky for the sole reason that its interface seemed to have a seizure every 30 seconds, spoke up in its cheerful monotone. "Approaching landing zone. Please ensure all limbs are inside the vehicle before disembarking. Remember, this comet does not have a return policy on human parts." "Thanks, Blinky," Reyes said, rolling her eyes. "Next time we upgrade, remind me to install an AI with a personality less painful than a tax audit," Voss smirked. "I like Blinky. It reminds me of my uncle, always there, never helpful." The sled touched down with all the grace of a drunken rhino, bouncing twice before stabilizing on the ice. Voss and his crew clambered out, their boots crunching on the frozen surface. The comet stretched out before them, a landscape of jagged ice formations and shadowy crevices. Somewhere beneath, the secret to Earth's FTL travel ban was waiting. "All right, folks," Voss said, checking his equipment. "Let's find out why the universe wants us to stay on the slow train to nowhere," Reyes snorted. "Probably because they can't handle our winning personalities." Voss nodded. "True. But maybe, just maybe, it has something to do with the fact we keep trying to blow it up every chance we get." The team fanned out, scanning for energy readings or anything that screamed ancient alien ritual site. It wasn't long before Specialist Jace Carter, the team's designated tech genius and amateur conspiracy theorist, called out. "Hey, Captain. I think I found something," Carter hollered, waving a scanner that looked more like a futuristic potato peeler. Voss trudged over, squinting at the display. "What have you got, Carter?" "An alien microwave, a cosmic toothbrush." Carter grinned, his thick glasses fogging slightly. "Better. An energy signature that matches the readings from the ancient multiverse civilization archives." "Well, hot damn," Reyes said, peering over their shoulders. "Looks like you win the scavenger hunt, Carter. The prize is a lifetime supply of existential dread." They followed Carter's lead, trudging across the ice until they reached a cluster of monoliths, their dark surfaces etched with symbols that seemed to shift when you looked away. It was unmistakably a ritual site, the atmosphere crackling with energy. "This is it," Voss murmured, feeling a tingle run down his spine. "This is what they didn't want us to find." Reyes knelt, brushing ice away from one of the symbols. "Looks like a bunch of angry squiggles to me." "Maybe they are," Voss said. "Or maybe they are the universe's version of a warning sign." As if on cue, the ground rumbled. Voss sighed, glancing skyward as if pleading with whatever cosmic entity had it out for him. "Really? Now?" Alien shapes emerged from the shadows, their bodies shimmering with an oily sheen. They looked like something that had crawled out of the universe's worst nightmares and decided to stick around for a chat. "Great," Reyes muttered, drawing her weapon. "Just the welcoming committee I was hoping to avoid." Carter, eyes wide, fumbled for his own sidearm. They're not supposed to be here." "Neither are we," Voss said, leveling his blaster. "Let's show them how much we love uninvited guests." The aliens didn't waste time on pleasantries, opening fire with weapons that glowed a sickly green. The team scattered, diving for cover behind the icy monoliths. "I've had birthday parties go better than this," Reyes shouted, returning fire. And my last one ended with a cake fight and 3 broken teeth. Voss ducked as a bolt of energy sizzled overhead. We need to find a way to that ritual site without getting turned into Swiss cheese. Ideas. Carter peeked out from behind his makeshift cover, fumbling with his scanner. The energy signature's strongest near the central monolith. If we can get there, we might be able to activate whatever's powering this place. And hopefully not blow ourselves to bits in the process, Voss added. I'm not keen on becoming a cautionary tale. Reyes grunted, reloading her blaster. All right, let's move before they decide to upgrade their weapons to something more personal. With a nod, Voss led the charge, darting from cover to cover as the alien forces pressed their attack. The air was thick with the acrid smell of ozone and the crackling energy of the ritual site. You know, Voss shouted over the din, I always thought if I went out in a blaze of glory, it'd be in a bar fight, not a cosmic shootout. Reyes laughed, a harsh, barking sound. I'd say this is more your style, Captain. You always did like making a big impression. They reached the central monolith, its surface pulsating with a light that seemed both inviting and menacing. Carter shoved his scanner into his pack, rubbing his hands together like a kid on Christmas morning. All right, let's see what makes this thing tick, he said, grinning like a madman. Or you know what makes it explode. Voss sighed, keeping one eye on the advancing aliens. Just hurry it up, Carter. I don't feel like being the guest of honor at their victory party. Carter's fingers danced over the monolith's surface, tapping into something ancient and powerful. The symbols flared to life, casting an eerie glow over the battlefield. Captain, Reyes said, her voice tight, I think they're getting closer. No kidding, Voss replied, firing off a few rounds to keep the aliens at bay. Carter, now would be a great time to pull a miracle out of your pocket. With a final tap, Carter stepped back, the monolith shuddering as the air filled with a low hum. It's done, he shouted, barely audible over the rising noise. The ground trembled and a wave of energy rippled out from the monolith, sweeping the aliens off their feet like a cosmic broom. Well, I'll be damned, Voss said, lowering his blaster. Looks like we might just live to complain another day. Reyes clapped Carter on the back, nearly sending him sprawling. Nice work, genius. Next round's on you, Carter grinned, panting slightly. I think I deserve at least 2. As they regrouped, Voss eyed the monolith warily. Let's not stick around to see what else this thing can do. We've got what we came for. The team began retreating toward the sled, their path illuminated by the fading glow of the ritual site. The aliens were down, but Voss knew better than to count them out. I'll bet you 50 creds we'll be back here in a week, Reyes said, glancing at Voss. He chuckled, shaking his head. You know what? I'll take that bet, but something tells me we'll have bigger problems by then. Blinky greeted them as they boarded the sled, its interface blinking with what could almost be mistaken for excitement. Welcome back, crew. I see you've returned in mostly one piece. Shall I prepare for immediate departure? Yeah, Voss said, sinking into his seat. And Blinky, remind me to update your programming. You need a sarcasm module. Updating preferences, Blinky chirped. Initiating launch sequence. As the sled lifted off, Voss watched the comet recede into the distance, its secrets still largely untapped. But they had a lead, and in this universe that was as good as gold. Reyes leaned over, her expression serious for once. What do you think this means for us, Captain? Voss shrugged, a wry grin on his face. I think it means we're in for one hell of a ride. And if we're lucky, we'll live long enough to regret it. The sled lurched as it docked back aboard their ship, the Asterisk Hornet's Nest Asterisk, named for its habit of stirring up trouble wherever it went. Captain Tiberius Voss surveyed the ragtag band of misfits that constituted his crew. They were panting, battle-rumpled, and wearing expressions halfway between exhilaration and impending hangovers. Well, that was a refreshing bit of exercise, Voss quipped, peeling off his helmet and trying to smooth his sweat-plastered hair. Nothing like a cosmic dust-up to get the blood pumping. Yeah, said Reyes, because running from nightmare fuel is my idea of a spa day. She rubbed a spot on her neck where an alien shot had come uncomfortably close. "Next time, let's just go to a nice asteroid belt. You know, somewhere we can get shot at by boring old pirates instead." Blinky's holographic presence flickered into view, its pixelated face almost resembling a half-smiling emoji. "Captain, I am pleased to report that no critical systems were compromised during the engagement. However, I recommend evasive action should the aliens pursue." "Thanks, Blinky," Voss said. "It's always comforting to know that our operational systems are more intact than my sense of self-preservation." Carter, still buzzing from his brush with ancient tech, leaned against the wall, his glasses slipping down his nose. "Hey, anybody else think those aliens seemed awfully interested in that ritual site? Like even more than we were." "Well, they didn't roll out the welcome mat for their health," Reyes said, her sarcasm a constant companion. "Think they're hiding something, Carter. Maybe a cosmic piñata full of secrets." "Could be," Carter replied, adjusting his glasses. "But I did manage to snag a little souvenir." He held up a small alien device, looking part circuit board, part malevolent Rubik's Cube. It even had the aura of caution, may explode in the wrong hands. Voss peered at the device with a mix of curiosity and dread. "And what do you plan to do with that? Use it as a paperweight? Because I'd rather not take up moonwalking as an eternal hobby." "Actually," Carter said, ignoring the jibe, "I think this might help us unlock the site's secrets. It was connected to one of the aliens' communication nodes. If we can decrypt it, we might figure out why they're so keen on keeping us away." Reyes crossed her arms, skeptical. "Or we could just find out they really don't like us scuffing up their front lawn. Either way, we gotta work fast. Those things aren't gonna let us poke around forever." "Right," Voss agreed. "First step, get the hell out of Dodge before they call in reinforcements. Second step, figure out what this little beauty tells us without turning us into space debris." As if on cue, Blinky chimed in, voice as monotone as ever. "Captain, I detect an incoming transmission on a secure band. It appears to be from the alien fleet." Voss exchanged a glance with Reyes. "Patch it through, Blinky. Let's see if they've got anything nice to say or if they're just inviting us to their goodbye humans party." The screen flickered to life, displaying a glitchy alien visage. It was all angles and shadows like a cubist's fever dream. The creature's voice came through like gravel on a chalkboard. "Humans," it hissed, the universal translator barely managing to keep up. "You have trespassed on sacred ground. Depart or face annihilation." Voss clapped his hands together, the picture of mock enthusiasm. "Wow, they really know how to roll out the hospitality. Did they send a fruit basket too?" Reyes smirked. "Maybe they ran out of threats and just wanted to practice their diplomacy. You know, shooting at us for funsies." Voss turned back to the screen. "I'll make this simple, friend. We're not leaving until we find out what you're hiding. So unless you want us back with a fleet, you might want to reconsider that threat." The alien's image flickered, its form distorting ominously before it cut off in a burst of static. "Charming fella, wasn't he?" Voss said dryly. "Let's get moving before they decide to show us just how serious they are." The asterisk hornet's nest asterisk roared to life, engines kicking up a tempest of frozen dust from the comet's surface. As they lifted off, the comet shrank beneath them, a pale dot against the expanse of the cosmos. Voss watched it disappear with a mix of relief and trepidation. In the common room, the crew gathered around the device Carter had commandeered. Blinky hovered nearby, offering helpful reminders of possible explosive decryption methods. "All right, Carter," Voss said, perching on the edge of a console. "Give us the good news. Can you crack it?" Carter pushed up his glasses, a sheen to his eyes reminiscent of a kid about to raid the cookie jar. "Oh, I'm cracking it. And if we're lucky, it won't crack back." Reyes drummed her fingers on her armrest. "And if we're not lucky, then we get to find out what human barbecue smells like," Carter answered, his tone a tad too cheerful. Voss grinned. "Well, here's hoping for luck then. I've heard we're due some." Carter's fingers flew across the interface, working the device like a puzzle he'd been solving since birth. It chirped and whirred, lights flickering in patterns that hinted at a language older than humanity itself. "Okay," Carter said, leaning back. "I've got a lead. It seems like the ritual site is some kind of control hub. There's data here about an activation sequence tied to an energy source beneath the surface." Voss raised an eyebrow. "So what you're saying is, we were standing on a giant cosmic switch and nobody thought to leave a manual." "Basically," Carter replied. "But there's more. According to this, activating the site could lift the FTL ban." Reyes leaned forward, narrowing her eyes. "Wait, you mean the ban that's been keeping Earth grounded for decades?" "That's the one," Carter confirmed. "Seems like the aliens really don't want us flipping that switch." Voss rubbed his chin, a wicked gleam in his eye. "Well, I guess we know what our next stop is." Reyes groaned. "Captain, tell me we're not going back there. My nerves can't handle another alien invasion." Voss shrugged, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Call it a scientific expedition or a suicide mission. Your pick." Blinky, ever the optimist, piped up. "Perhaps a safer course of action would be to decrypt more data before attempting a return. Or we could just charge in and see what happens," Reyes said, sarcasm heavy in her voice. "That's the spirit," Voss laughed. "But first we need to make sure we're ready. Blinky, scan the area for any signs of reinforcements. Let's see if we've stirred the hornet's nest enough." "Initiating scan," Blinky obligingly replied, while the crew exchanged weary looks that spoke volumes about their current predicament. "Great," Reyes muttered. "I always wanted to be part of intergalactic politics, just without the constant threat of annihilation." Voss clapped her on the back. "Think of it as career development. You're getting experience in diplomacy, combat, and archaeology, all rolled into one." "So what's next?" Carter asked, still buzzing from his hacking success. "We head back to the Comet," Voss answered, his tone resolute. "And we find out if we can really lift the FTL ban. If we pull this off, Earth will finally get its wings back." Reyes sighed, knowing there was no talking Voss out of a plan once he set his sights on it. "Well, let's make sure we've got a backup plan, like not dying." "That's the kind of proactive thinking I like," Voss said, flashing his too-white smile. "All right, crew, let's prep for round 2. And remember, when in doubt, aim for the head." As the Hornet's Nest powered up for its return journey, Voss couldn't help but feel a thrill of anticipation. They were about to rewrite the rules of the universe, one alien conspiracy at a time. And if they survived, well, that would make for one hell of a story. The Hornet's Nest drifted in its orbit around the comet, a figurative fly buzzing around a cosmic carcass. Voss stood in the center of the control room, hands on his hips, gazing at the spinning mass of ice and rock below. If he squinted just right, he could almost see the place where they'd first landed when this mess started. Not that he had any plans of going back there, not unless he wanted a repeat performance of the "Let's Get Shot At by Angry Aliens" show. "All right, listen up," Voss called out, his voice carrying over the steady hum of the ship. "We've got work to do, and I don't mean the kind that involves kicking back with a nice space dinny." Reyes shot him a look from her seat. "A space dinny? Really?" "I think I'd prefer a space on the beach." "Yeah, well, unless you can convince Blinky to reprogram the holodeck, we're stuck with this lovely view," Voss replied, motioning towards the comet. Blinky, ever the loyal AI, piped up in its typical monotone. "Captain, I do not possess any recreational programming beyond basic relaxation techniques, such as simulated breathing exercises." "Thanks, Blinky," Voss said, rolling his eyes. "I'll be sure to hold my breath." Reyes forced a smile. "So what's the plan, fearless leader, aside from adding Escape Alien Death Squad to our resumes?" Voss's smile was shark-like. "We're going back down there. Carter's little toy has given us a lead, an activation sequence for lifting the FTL ban. But first, we have to make sure it's not just a fancy way of saying self-destruct." "And if it is?" Carter asked, joining them at the console, glasses glinting under the harsh lights. "Then we find out what vaporized humans smell like, or we don't find out anything ever again. Either way, it's an adventure." Voss looked over the crew, his expression one of grim determination. "Quill, you're with us. We need a scientist who can tell a data drive from an explosive." Dr. Lyra Quill, their resident brainiac, looked up from her tablet where she'd been immersed in something far more interesting than imminent doom. "Well, that's reassuring. Drag the scientist into the line of fire." "Sounds like a brilliant plan. Just think of it as field work," Reyes said with a smirk, "with the added bonus of potential disintegration." Quill sighed, tucking her tablet under one arm. "Great, as long as we survive long enough to publish." The sled was prepped, its engines idling like a bored beast waiting to be unleashed. Voss, Reyes, Carter, and Quill clambered aboard, each with varying degrees of enthusiasm, or lack thereof. The sled dropped from the ship, the transition from weightlessness to gravity a brief jolt that served as a reminder of the stakes at play. As they descended back to the comet's icy surface, Voss couldn't help but crack his knuckles, a habit that always drove Reyes up the wall. "Haven't been this excited since that time we almost got eaten by a space kraken. Speak for yourself," Reyes muttered, tightening her grip on the sled's rail. "I was hoping for a nice, quiet day of not dying." The sled skimmed the surface of the comet, approaching the area they'd marked on their previous visit. Ice crystals danced like specters in their wake, swirling in the craft's slipstream. With a lurch, the vehicle slowed and settled onto the frozen terrain, engines whirring to a halt. Quill was the first out, her breath fogging the air as she surveyed the alien landscape. "Well, at least it's not boring." "That's the spirit," Voss said, clapping her on the back. "Now, let's see if we can avoid turning into cosmic punchlines." The site lay before them, a haphazard arrangement of monoliths and cables that looked more like an abstract art installation than a control hub. Carter was already on it, fiddling with the alien device as though it might suddenly grant him supreme cosmic wisdom, or a one-way ticket to oblivion. "Okay, Carter," Voss said, peering over the kid's shoulder. "Walk us through it before we accidentally blow up half the galaxy." Carter adjusted his glasses, squinting at the display. "Right. So this thing is basically a universal remote, but for a very specific type of ancient tech. We need to sync it with the monoliths to access the activation sequence." "Sounds straightforward," Reyes said, her voice dripping with irony. "And by straightforward, I mean likely to end in a fiery mess." Quill knelt beside Carter, her eyes taking in the alien architecture. "The energy signatures are off the charts. Whatever's down there, it's big. Maybe even big enough to lift the FTL ban. Or big enough to blow us all to hell," Voss added helpfully. "Comforting," Quill replied. "Let's get to work." The process was less mad scientist and more IT support on a particularly bad day. Carter and Quill worked in tandem, adjusting settings, aligning frequencies, and muttering curses in languages both known and forgotten. Voss and Reyes kept watch, eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of unwelcome guests. "So," Reyes said, as they waited for Carter and Quill to work their magic. "What's your plan if this goes south?" Voss shrugged. "I thought we'd wing it. Maybe improvise a little interpretive dance routine to distract them. You do realize that involves us, right?" Reyes replied. "I could always play dead," Voss offered. "Though I doubt our alien friends would be fooled." Reyes chuckled, the sound a rare reprieve from the tension. "Great. So we can all die laughing." Their banter was cut short by the distant hum of engines, a sound that set their nerves on edge. Voss's hand went to his communicator. "Blinky, we're picking up on some unfriendly vibrations. Care to enlighten us?" Blinky's voice crackled through the comms. "Captain, I am detecting multiple life forms approaching from the east. They appear to be armed and moving fast." "Fantastic," Voss said, with all the enthusiasm of a man being offered a tax audit. He turned to the others. "Time to wrap it up, people. We've got company." Carter and Quill worked faster, their movements a blur of frantic activity. The alien device beeped and chirped, a symphony of technological confusion that seemed ready to culminate in either revelation or destruction. Reyes unslung her rifle, eyes darting to the horizon. I've got a visual, at least 3 incoming hostiles. They don't look like they're here to offer us a peace treaty. Voss joined her, his own weapon at the ready. Just like old times, huh? Yeah, Reyes said, taking aim. Except this time I'd prefer we make it out intact. No promises, Voss replied, squinting through the scope. Back at the site, the device let out a triumphant chime. Carter looked up, triumph and terror intermingling on his face. I think I've got it. The sequence is active. Quill nodded, eyes wide with realization. The energy readings are spiking. If we're going to do this, it's now or never. Sounds like a plan, Voss shouted. Everybody on the sled. We're getting out here. The team scrambled as the alien hostiles closed in, shots ringing out in the frigid air. Voss and Reyes provided cover fire, their weapons barking defiance at the advancing threat. They were on a clock now, the countdown ticking away in the back of their minds. Carter and Quill made it to the sled, the engine roaring to life with a desperate urgency. Voss and Reyes followed, their retreat covered by the haze of dust and confusion left in the sled's wake. Punch it, Carter, Voss yelled as they piled into the vehicle. Before we become space debris. The sled shot forward, the ground blurring beneath them as they tore away from the site. The alien fire chased them, hot on their heels, but the sled proved more than a match for their pursuers. Reyes glanced back, her expression a mix of relief and anxiety. You know, next time we go artifact hunting, maybe we should bring a bigger gun. Voss chuckled, the sound breathless and tinged with adrenaline. Or maybe just a faster sled. As they raced towards the waiting Hornet's Nest the Comet loomed large in their rear view, a reminder of how close they'd come to being just another set of bones, frozen forever in the void. Back aboard the ship, the mood was a strange brew of tension and relief. The alien device had been left behind, its secrets unlocked but not yet shared. Voss stood at the viewport, watching as the Comet receded into the distance once more. Well, he said, turning to face his crew, that went about as well as could be expected. Yeah, Reyes replied, arms crossed. But are we any closer to lifting that ban? We might be, Quill answered, her eyes bright with the possibility. But first, we need to make sure that whatever Carter activated doesn't end with us as cosmic toast. Here's hoping, Voss said, leaning back against the wall, a grin playing on his lips. Because if it does, I'm not sure I'm ready for an encore. Carter sighed, his previous excitement tempered with the weight of what they'd set in motion. Next stop home. And maybe a drink, Voss added. Because if we're going to save the universe, we might as well do it with a little style. As the Hornet's Nest powered up for its next jump, Voss looked around at his crew, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and determination. They'd survived another scrap, and the answers to their questions were tantalizingly within reach. But for now, there was only one thing left to do: brace for whatever came next and hope that this time luck would be on their side. All right, Voss said, taking his seat. Let's show the universe what we're made of. And with that, the Hornet's Nest leapt into the void, its mission far from over, but far from over in the way only the best adventures could be. Unpredictable, dangerous, and filled with the promise of something greater. Voss leaned back in his chair aboard the Hornet's Nest nursing the kind of hangover only an adrenaline high could give. He had a mug of something that pretended to be coffee but might as well have been engine degreaser. The Comet, Rocky the Deathball, loomed large in their viewport. It wasn't an inviting sort of place, more like the party guest who overstays their welcome and starts eating the decorative soaps. Blinky's droning voice cut through the silence. Captain, I've analyzed the data from the alien device. It's not good news. Surprise, surprise, Voss muttered, setting down his mug. Lay it on me, Blinky. The ritual requires a rare element. Let's call it unobtainium because the universe loves irony. That's only found deep within the Comet's core. And by deep, I mean past the point of no return. Oh, just perfect, Reyes said, rolling her eyes so hard Voss could practically hear them move. Because all we needed was another reason to die today. Carter, still buzzing with the thrill of not being vaporized, looked up from his tablet. "What's the big deal? We've done risky before." "Yeah, except this time we're not just risking our necks," Quill pointed out, pulling up beside Carter. "We're talking about a cosmic game of Jenga. Pull the wrong block and it's game over for everyone." Voss stood, clapping his hands together like a general about to send his troops into certain doom. "Well, team, sounds like it's time for a field trip." Reyes threw him a look that could wilt flowers. "You're insane, you know that." "Guilty as charged," Voss replied. "But if we don't do this, we might as well ask the aliens for a reservation in their eternal ice exhibit." Quill sighed, looking every bit like a scientist who regretted every life choice leading to this moment. "So what's the plan?" Voss grinned, the kind of grin you'd expect from a man who'd just been told he'd won a vacation to Chernobyl. "We find the unobtainium, grab it, and hope we can convince the universe not to implode." "Solid plan," Reyes said dryly. "Right up there with poke the space bear and hope it's not hungry." "Blinky," Voss said, ignoring Reyes' sarcasm. "What's the ETA on those alien friends of ours?" "Approximately 4 hours until they reach our position," Blinky replied. "Plenty of time to ponder life's poor decisions." "Then we better get moving," Voss said. "Carter, Quill, prep the sled. Reyes, keep an eye out for any unexpected guests." The team moved with the enthusiasm of condemned prisoners, each step a testament to their dwindling patience. A not-so-well-kept secret in the cramped quarters of the Hornet's Nest Asterisk. As they prepared for their descent to the comet's core, Voss stood at the airlock, cracking his knuckles in a symphony of personal irritation for Reyes. "You ever wonder why it's always us?" he asked. "Because the universe has a twisted sense of humor." Reyes shot back, her voice tinged with resigned amusement. "Exactly," Voss said, stepping onto the sled with the grace of a man who knew he should have taken up gardening instead. The sled dropped once more, cutting through the comet's thin atmosphere like a hot knife through disappointment. They descended through jagged tunnels of ice, the vehicle's lights casting eerie shadows that danced like malicious phantoms. Voss couldn't help but think of it as a haunted house from hell, complete with the potential for real-life dismemberment. "Cozy," he said, his voice echoing in the sled's cramped quarters. Quill checked her instruments, her brow furrowed with the kind of focus reserved for brain surgery or connecting a Wi-Fi printer. "We should hit the core in about 10 minutes. Assuming we're not crushed by falling ice or impaled on a stalagmite." "Great," Reyes muttered. "I was worried we'd get bored." As they delved deeper, the sled began to shudder, the temperature gauges edging towards the kind of cold usually reserved for mothers-in-law and ex-girlfriends. It was an environment designed to make any sane person reconsider their life goals. Unfortunately, sanity wasn't on the manifest. The sled hit bottom with a lurch, the crew tumbling out into a cavern that glowed with the soft, ominous light of the unobtainium they sought. It radiated a cold beauty, like a supermodel who also happened to be a serial killer. "Wow," Carter breathed, eyes wide. "It's something." "Yeah," Voss agreed. "Something that's going to get us killed if we're not careful." Quill, ever the scientist, was already taking readings, her excitement barely contained by her usual veneer of cynicism. "The energy output is insane. If we can harvest this, it might be enough to lift the FTL ban, or blow us all to smithereens," Reyes reminded her, peering into the shadows for any signs of movement. "Details, details," Voss said, clapping his hands together. "Let's get what we came for and get out of here before we become part of the Daker." With a mixture of trepidation and grim determination, they set to work, extracting the unobtainium with tools that looked like they belonged in a torture chamber. The process was delicate and dangerous, like diffusing a bomb in a clown costume. One wrong move, and they'd be scattered across the galaxy like confetti at a particularly ill-fated wedding. Just as they were finishing up, a rumble echoed through the cavern, sending a shiver of dread down their spines. Voss's communicator crackled to life. "Blinky here. It appears the activity has attracted attention." The alien forces are moving in quicker than anticipated. Of course they are, Voss said, voice tinged with exasperation. Because why would anything go right? Reyes unslung her rifle, checking the charge with the practiced ease of someone who's used it too many times in self-defense. Looks like we're in for another round of let's not die today. With the unobtainium secured, the team scrambled back to the sled, the icy walls closing in like a bad horror movie cliché. The ride back was tense, the kind of tension that could snap guitar strings or necks. The alien forces were closing in, their silhouettes visible against the comet's stark landscape. It was the kind of situation that made Voss wish for the good old days of normal space piracy. No alien death squads, no existential crises, just honest theft and the occasional mutiny. Blinky, Voss called, adrenaline surging as they neared the surface. Get the hornet's nest ready to fly. We're coming in hot. Of course, Captain, Blinky replied with all the enthusiasm of a malfunctioning toaster. I'll prepare the ship for what is sure to be another near-death experience. The sled broke the surface, racing towards the ship as the alien forces closed in like the universe's worst welcoming committee. Shots rang out, scorching the ice and filling the air with the acrid scent of failure. Voss and Reyes returned fire, their weapons blazing with the kind of determination only sheer desperation could fuel. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. Just another day at the office. The sled skidded to a halt beneath the ship's hull, the crew scrambling aboard like rats fleeing a sinking ship. The asterisk hornet's nest asterisk roared to life, engines screaming in protest as it clawed its way into space. Reyes leaned against the bulkhead, panting as the ship stabilized. Well, that was fun. Yeah, Voss agreed, wiping sweat from his brow. Let's not do it again anytime soon. Carter held up the unobtainium, his expression a mix of triumph and terror. We got it, though. We actually got it. Quill nodded, her eyes gleaming with a mix of scientific curiosity and pure terror. Now we just have to figure out how to use it without blowing ourselves to kingdom come. Voss sank into his chair, the weight of their mission pressing down like a particularly persistent migraine. No pressure, right? Right, Quill said, her voice dry as the void outside. Just another day saving the universe. The asterisk hornet's nest asterisk powered through the cosmos, leaving the comet and its secrets behind. The mission was far from over, the stakes higher than ever, but for now they were alive. And as Voss peered out into the endless darkness, he couldn't help but grin. Because if they were going to defy the odds and save humanity, they might as well do it with a little style. And maybe, just maybe, a bit of luck. All right, team, he said, turning to face his crew. Let's see where this crazy ride takes us next. With that, the asterisk hornet's nest asterisk surged forward, engines blazing a trail through the stars, their journey just beginning, and the universe ready to throw whatever it had left in its arsenal. The asterisk hornet's nest asterisk bucked and jolted through space like a drunken ox in a china shop. The alien ships were not just closing in, they were practically knocking on the door, asking to borrow a cup of death. Captain Tiberius Voss, head throbbing from what felt like the universe's worst hangover, knew they were in a tight spot, a kind where you don't just lose some teeth but your entire jaw. Not to sound hysterical, Carter said, eyes glued to the tactical display, but we've got more company than a free bar in a pirate port. Could be worse, Voss replied, eyes narrowing. Could be a dry port. Reyes was manning the controls, fingers dancing over the console keys like a concert pianist with a vendetta. Anyone got a genius plan, or should I start writing my will? Voss cracked his knuckles, the sound a familiar irritant that made Reyes wince. We're gonna make a detour, he said, eyes glinting with a mix of mischief and misjudgment. Back to Rocky the Deathball. Reyes groaned, her patience wearing thinner than the ship's hull. Returning to the scene of the impending funeral. Brilliant. Thank you for the vote of confidence, Voss shot back, sarcasm dripping. But if we can lure them close enough to the comet, the unstable core might do them in before they do us. Quill, the team's resident scientist, looked up from her instrument's face a portrait of skepticism. And if it doesn't, then we get to be the world's first interstellar popsicles, Voss said, giving her a thumbs up. Always wanted my own exhibit. The ship lurched again, a reminder from the universe that it hated them with a passion usually reserved for ex-spouses and tax collectors. Voss strapped himself in, feeling the weight of leadership like a boulder tied to his neck. He'd always wanted to go down in history, but not as cosmic debris. Blinky, any bright ideas? Voss asked the ship's AI, though he doubted anything in this scenario could be called bright. Just the usual, Captain, Blinky responded with its characteristic cheerlessness. Brace for impact and regret your life choices. The ship twisted and turned, dodging incoming fire with the grace of a three-legged giraffe on roller skates. Voss could feel the tension in the air, the kind of electric anxiety you could almost taste, like licking a battery on a dare. Carter, always the optimist, nodded towards the stack of alien wreckage on the display. At least they're poor shots. Gives us a fighting chance. More like a losing chance, Reyes corrected, her fingers flying over the controls. But I'll take what I can get. The alien ships were relentless, a swarm of metallic locusts hell-bent on devouring everything in their path. Voss was starting to think they were more than just angry, they were downright pissed. We're approaching the Comet, Quill announced, her voice a mix of urgency and resignation. Energy readings are off the charts. This thing could go nuclear at any moment. Good, Voss replied, grinning with the kind of insane bravado that only made sense in hindsight. Let's give them a show. As the asterisk Hornet's Nest asterisk swooped low over the Comet, the alien ships followed, their engines howling like banshees in the void. Voss could feel the vibrations, the ship straining as it pushed its limits. Hold on, everyone, he said, voice steady despite the chaos. This is gonna be a bumpy ride. The Comet's surface loomed large, a frozen hellscape that promised nothing but a one-way trip to oblivion. Voss knew they were playing a dangerous game, but there was no room for doubt. Not now, when failure meant not just death but oblivion. As they skimmed the surface, the ship's sensors screamed warnings like a hysterical aunt at a family reunion. The alien ships were closing in for the kill, their weapons primed to turn the asterisk Hornet's Nest asterisk into space dust. Now, Reyes, Voss barked, and she didn't hesitate. With a flick of her wrist, she sent the ship into a dizzying spiral, skirting the Comet's jagged surface with inches to spare. The alien ships trailed behind, too close for comfort. The Comet trembled beneath them, the unstable core reacting to their presence. Voss could feel it, a primal energy building beneath the surface, ready to explode with the fury of 1,000 suns. Quill, how long until that core goes boom? He asked, eyes fixed on the display. Minutes, maybe seconds, Quill replied, her voice edged with the kind of excitement that only came from dancing on the edge of disaster. Perfect, Voss said, grinning like a madman. Let's make sure we're not here to see it. With a final twist, Reyes pulled the ship away from the Comet, engines roaring as they broke free of the gravitational pull. The alien ships, too focused on their prey, didn't react in time. The Comet's core erupted, a brilliant flash of light that swallowed the alien ships in an instant. Voss watched, a mix of relief and awe flooding through him. They'd done it. Somehow they'd survived. But the cost was high. The asterisk Hornet's Nest asterisk was battered, barely holding together, and the crew, though alive, was a collection of bruises and exhaustion. Voss sank back into his chair, the adrenaline fading to leave only bone-deep weariness. Well, that was a thing, he said, the sarcasm a thin veneer over raw relief. Reyes was slumped in her seat, too tired to even glare at him. Next time, let's not do that. Carter was still grinning despite the sweat and grime. We made it, though. Against all odds, Quill was checking the instruments, her focus already shifting to the next problem. The unobtainium is stable, but we need to figure out how to use it. This was just the beginning. Voss nodded, feeling the weight of the future pressing down. There was so much left to do, so many hurdles still to overcome. But for now, they were alive, and that was enough. Blinky status report, Voss said, wanting to make sure they still had a ship to fly. Structural integrity is compromised, Blinky reported with all the enthusiasm of a mortician reading last rites. But we're not dead yet. Voss gave a weak laugh. Great, let's keep it that way. The crew settled into a weary silence, each of them lost in their thoughts. The battle had been brutal, a harsh reminder of the dangers they faced, but they'd come through it together, and that meant something, even in a universe that seemed hell-bent on erasing them. All right, team, Voss said, trying to rally them. We've got a long way to go, but if we can survive this, we can survive anything. Carter chuckled, a sound that was more cough than laughter. Here's to the universe's worst odds. Ray's managed a tired smile, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. And here's to beating them. Quill, ever the pragmatist, nodded. One step at a time, we'll get there. Voss looked around at his crew, the ragtag bunch of misfits who'd become his family. They were battered, bruised, and barely holding together, but they were still fighting, still hoping. And in a universe that seemed determined to crush them, that was victory enough for now. All right, people, Voss said, feeling the stirrings of determination reignite in his chest. Let's see what kind of mischief we can get into next. With that, the Hornet's Nest limped through space, leaving the shattered comet behind, a testament to their tenacity and madness. They were far from out of the woods, but for the first time in a long while, hope felt like more than just a cruel joke. And as they set their course, Voss couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, they were on the verge of something big. Something that might just change everything. They just had to survive long enough to see it. The Hornet's Nest groaned like an old dog shaking off fleas, its systems flickering back to life in a haphazard fashion. Voss sat in the captain's chair, massaging his temples, the pounding in his skull competing with the droning alarms for his attention. He glanced at the battered crew, each of them looking like they'd been dragged through a black hole backward. But alive. Against all cosmic odds, they were alive. That was fun, Voss said, the sarcasm dripping off his words like oil from a leaky engine. Anyone need a bathroom break before we do it again? Ray's rolled her eyes, her fingers still dancing over the controls, coaxing the ship into a semblance of cooperation. Would it kill you to find a plan that doesn't involve nearly killing us? Probably, Voss replied, with a grin as crooked as the ship's trajectory. Where's the fun in certainty? Fun, Quill muttered, her attention on the data streaming across her console. That's one word for it. Blinky's artificial voice chimed in, dry as a desert. I'd suggest a new career path if you're not enjoying the excitement. I hear accounting is thrilling this time of year. Thanks for the career advice, Blinky, Voss said, standing up with the enthusiasm of a man who'd rather be doing anything else. But right now, we need to figure out what the hell we're doing with this unobtainium and that alien Rubik's Cube. Quill adjusted her glasses, peering more closely at the screens. The device is responding to the presence of unobtainium, but it's not doing what it's supposed to. Which is what exactly? Carter asked, leaning over her shoulder, clearly trying to make sense of the nonsensical. Not sure yet, Quill admitted. But I can tell you what it's not doing, exploding. Yet, Ray sighed, leaning back in her seat. Small wins. Voss drummed his fingers on the armrest, his mind racing. Blinky, run another scan on the device. See if there's anything we missed. On it, Captain, Blinky replied, as the ship's scanners whirred to life with all the enthusiasm of a cat being dragged to a bath. Meanwhile, Carter was busy scrutinizing the tactical display, frowning at the barrage of numbers and symbols. Looks like we've bought ourselves some time, but the alien death squad isn't going to stay away forever. We need a plan. Right? Voss muttered, feeling the responsibility clenching around his neck like a noose. Because winging it only gets you so far, unlike your knuckles, Reyes said, flashing him a grin that was more teeth than warmth. Everyone's a critic, Voss replied, cracking his knuckles again just to annoy her. It was the little things that kept him going. Moments later, Blinky's report flashed onto the screen. Captain, I've found something. There's a sequence embedded in the unobtainium's energy signature. A message, possibly. Voss peered closer, his interest piqued. A message. From who, more like what, Blinky corrected. It's encrypted, but the patterns suggest it's a kind of signal. Almost like music. Great, Reyes said, rubbing her temples. We're dealing with aliens who communicate like a bad pop song. Maybe it's their version of Hello by Adele, Carter quipped, earning him a few chuckles despite the tension. Or Goodbye, Reyes shot back, her humor darker than a black hole's heart. Voss was quiet, his mind turning over the possibilities. Blinky, can you decode it? Working on it, Captain, Blinky replied, the AI tones as flat as ever. But it'll take time. It's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Fantastic, Voss said, sinking back into his chair. We've got more puzzles than pieces, more questions than answers, and more enemies than friends. Quill tapped away at her screen, her focus intense. There's something else. The sequence might be hinting at a forgotten human element, something unique to our species, like a talent for causing trouble. Reyes suggested, her sarcasm as sharp as ever. More like ingenuity, Quill replied, ignoring the jibe. It's almost as if the device needs a human touch. Something only we can do. Voss sat up, his interest renewed. Human ingenuity. That's our wild card. He rubbed his hands together, ideas sparking. We've got to outthink the bastards. Carter raised an eyebrow. So, we're betting the universe on our ability to wing it better than anyone else. Sounds about right, Voss said, with a grin that was both confident and slightly unhinged. When has that ever gone wrong for us? Quill snorted softly, barely audible over the hum of the ship. As plans go, it's not the worst I've heard. Reyes looked at Voss, her expression a mix of skepticism and reluctant admiration. All right, Captain, lead the way. If we crash and burn, at least it'll be spectacular. Spectacular is what I aim for, Voss replied, setting his sights on the task ahead. Quill, keep working on that signal. Carter, Reyes, get us ready for whatever comes next. Blinky, keep monitoring for any sign of those alien ships. The crew nodded, each slipping into their roles with a weary but determined resolve. They were a ragtag bunch, to be sure, but they had something their enemies didn't. A refusal to give up, no matter the odds. As the Hornet's Nest limped through space, the crew worked tirelessly, each driven by the unspoken understanding that failure wasn't an option. Not anymore. Not with so much at stake. Hours passed, the silence punctuated only by the steady hum of machinery and the occasional sarcastic exchange. Finally, Blinky's voice cut through the quiet. Captain, I've managed to decode part of the message. Voss leaned forward, anticipation etched on his features. And the device is designed to resonate with human thought patterns, Blinky explained. It reacts to our unique problem-solving approach. A damned alien empathy box, Carter said, shaking his head in disbelief. What, they couldn't just send a memo, Reyes smirked. Guess they figured we wouldn't read it anyway. Can't say they're wrong, Voss stood, a newfound determination fueling his movements. All right, team, we've got ourselves a plan. We're gonna think our way out of this mess. Quill adjusted her glasses, looking at him with something approaching respect. Simple, but it might just work. Voss cracked his knuckles, bracing himself for what lay ahead. Here's to making the impossible possible. The crew gathered around, their collective focus sharpening into a single, unyielding force. They were battered, bruised, and desperately outmatched, but they had one thing their enemies didn't: an unbreakable spirit. And they were about to prove that in the most spectacular way possible. In the cold, unfeeling expanse of space, the Hornet's Nest surged forward, carrying its ragtag band of misfits into the unknown. They were ready for whatever came next, armed with nothing but their wits and a newfound appreciation for human ingenuity. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. As they set their course, Voss couldn't help but feel a spark of hope, small but stubborn, flickering in his chest. They'd survived against all odds, and now they were on the brink of something incredible, something that might just change everything. With a final nod to his crew, Voss settled into his chair, confident that they were closer than ever to uncovering the truth and maybe finding a way to turn the tables on their relentless pursuers. In the end, it was anyone's game, but Voss knew one thing for certain: they weren't out of tricks yet. Not by a long shot. The Hornet's Nest was once again limping through the void, a lumbering steel carcass one wrong turn away from becoming cosmic debris. Captain Tiberius Voss was in his element, which was to say, up to his neck in chaos with his crew, as the only thing separating him from a cold, unfriendly universe. "All right, geniuses," Voss called out, his voice carrying over the steady hum of the system struggling to maintain some semblance of functionality. "The aliens are breathing down our necks, and we've got a space Rubik's Cube that thinks it's a DJ. What's our next move?" Reyes, ever the pragmatist, tapped her console with the impatience of someone fully aware they were in a death trap held together by duct tape and optimism. "We could always play dress-up and hope the aliens mistake us for a traveling circus." "Unlikely," Voss replied, "though it wouldn't be the first time we've been mistaken for clowns." Lieutenant Leela Reyes shot him a look that could blister paint. "Captain, can we please focus on not dying?" "Fine, fine." "Blinky, how's that decoding coming along?" Voss asked, cracking his knuckles with the satisfaction of a man who knew how to push buttons, literal and metaphorical. "Progressing as well as can be expected," Blinky responded, its digital tones somehow managing to sound exasperated. "The signal is like a bad science fiction plot, dense, unnecessarily convoluted, and prone to sudden bursts of inexplicable logic." Blinky's sarcasm was lost on no one, and Voss allowed himself a chuckle. "Keep at it. We're running out of time." "Speaking of time," Dr. Lyra Quill interjected, peering over her glasses with the weary patience of someone used to dealing with lunatics. "If that signal is indeed a message, we need to interpret it before we're cosmically screwed." "No pressure then," Carter muttered, his fingers flying over the tactical display. "We've got hostile signals on the edge of our sensors. They're sniffing around like a pack of hungry wolves." Voss leaned back in his chair, the weight of command pressing down like an anvil. "All right, people, listen up. We need a plan. We've got this alien music box, a chunk of unobtainium we can't afford to lose, and a whole lot of nothing else." Quill, ever the optimist, or what passed for one in these circumstances, raised a hand. "I've got a theory. Those usually end well," Reyes quipped, earning a glare from Quill. Quill ignored the jab and continued, "The unobtainium isn't just a key. It's a catalyst. The device responds to human thought patterns, right? We need to think our way through the sequence." "What, like a collective brainwave jam session?" Carter asked, skepticism dripping from every syllable. "Precisely," Quill replied with a nod that could almost be called enthusiastic. "It's about synergy. Our thoughts can kickstart the device's activation sequence." Voss scratched his chin, pondering the implications. "So we get the band together, play the right tune, and hopefully the aliens don't crash the concert." "It's a long shot," Quill admitted, "but it might be our only shot." Voss glanced at his crew, each of them worn and weary but still standing, still fighting. "All right then. Let's roll the dice. Blinky, get ready to interface that thing with our neural patterns," Reyes ordered, pushing her chair back and stretching like a cat preparing for a fight. "Already done," Blinky said, with the digital equivalent of a shrug. "Now we just need to think really hard. A concept you might find challenging. Always with the jokes, Blinky," Carter said, shaking his head. "One of these days I'll find your off switch." The crew gathered around the device, each of their expressions a mixture of determination and resigned amusement. Voss took a deep breath, trying to ignore the nagging feeling that they were about to make history or be history. "Everyone ready to think happy thoughts?" Voss asked, looking around at his ragtag team. "Always," Reyes replied, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Let's do this," Quill added, adjusting her glasses with a steely resolve. The crew focused, channeling their thoughts, hopes, and a fair amount of snark into the alien device. It hummed and vibrated, lights flickering as if responding to some unseen force. "Anything," Voss asked, trying to ignore the sweat beading on his forehead. Not yet, Blinky said, its voice tense with concentration. Keep it up. We're getting somewhere. Suddenly, the device pulsed with light, a cascade of colors swirling across its surface. It was as if the universe was holding its breath, waiting to see what these peculiar humans would do next. We've got activity, Quill exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. Keep thinking, Voss muttered, his eyes fixed on the device, willing it to work, to do something, anything. As if responding to his silent plea, the device emitted a deep, resonant tone that echoed through the asterisk hornet's nest asterisk like the tolling of a bell. The ship shuddered, a ripple of energy coursing through its hull. Captain, Carter said, his voice tinged with both awe and apprehension. I think it's working good. Voss shouted over the rising hum. Because we're about to have company, the sensors flared to life, displaying a cluster of alien ships on a collision course. Their intent was clear. They wanted their prize back, and they didn't care who they had to vaporize to get it. Raise, evasive maneuvers. Voss barked, his knuckles white as he gripped the armrests. On it, Raise responded, her hands flying over the controls with the precision of a master pianist, coaxing every ounce of speed from the battered vessel. Carter, get the weapons online. Voss continued, adrenaline coursing through his veins like liquid fire. We're not going down without a fight, Carter nodded, his fingers dancing over the tactical interface. Weapons are hot. Let's give them a warm welcome. The asterisk hornet's nest asterisk spun and twisted through the void, a desperate ballet of survival. Explosions lit the darkened sky as the ship's guns blazed, returning fire with a ferocity born of desperation. Blinky, how's that sequence coming? Voss shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of battle. We're almost there, Captain, Blinky replied, its tones a maddening mix of calm and urgency. Just a little longer, Voss gritted his teeth, his mind racing. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and just about out of time. But Voss had never been one to back down from a challenge, no matter how impossible it seemed. Quill, how's the device looking? Voss asked, sparing a glance at the scientist. It's still resonating, Quill replied, her eyes glued to the readings. Whatever we're doing, it's working. Let's hope it's enough, Voss muttered, turning his attention back to the chaos unfolding outside. The alien ships were relentless, their weapons' fire slicing through the void with deadly precision. Voss watched as the view screen flared with the light of near misses, each one a reminder of just how close they were to oblivion. Raise, we need more speed, Voss urged, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline as the ship strained against the onslaught. I'm giving her all she's got, Captain. Raise shot back, her voice a mixture of irritation and determination. The asterisk hornet's nest asterisk lurched to one side, narrowly avoiding a barrage of plasma bolts that would have turned it into a floating scrap heap. Voss held his breath, his heart pounding in his chest as they careened through the void, dodging and weaving like a drunken dancer. Captain, Quill shouted, her voice tinged with urgency. The device, it's responding. A surge of energy rippled through the ship, the alien device glowing with an intensity that seemed to pulse in time with their thoughts. Voss could almost feel it, the strange, ethereal connection between them and the enigmatic machine. Keep it up, Voss urged, his voice barely audible over the rising crescendo. We're almost there. The device shimmered and pulsed, its energies merging with the unobtainium in a symphony of color and light. Voss could feel it building, a crescendo that would either be their salvation or their doom. And then, with a sound like 1,000 cathedral bells ringing in harmony, the device activated. Captain, Blinky exclaimed, its voice uncharacteristically emotional. The signal, it's been sent. Voss stared at the view screen, his heart in his throat. The alien ships continued their assault, but something was different. Their formation faltered, their movements uncertain. What's happening? Carter asked, his eyes wide with disbelief. They're hesitating, Quill said, her voice a mixture of awe and excitement. The signal, it's affecting them. They don't know what to do. Voss felt a surge of hope, a fragile, flickering light in the encroaching darkness. "This is our chance," he said, his voice filled with a determination that burned like a star. "Let's finish this." The crew rallied, their efforts redoubled as they pressed their advantage. The alien ships, disoriented and confused, began to retreat, their assault faltering in the face of an enemy they could neither understand nor predict. "Voss, we did it!" Reyes shouted, her voice hoarse with disbelief and triumph. The alien fleet, once so menacing, was now a scattering of confused vessels, retreating into the void like shadows fleeing the dawn. The asterisk Hornet's Nest asterisk hung in space, battered but unbroken, its crew triumphant against all odds. Voss let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, the weight of command lifting from his shoulders as the enormity of what they'd achieved sank in. "Good work, everyone," he said, his voice filled with gratitude and pride. "We've done something incredible today." Quill adjusted her glasses, a small smile playing on her lips. "We've proven that human ingenuity can overcome anything." Voss nodded, his heart filled with a quiet, stubborn hope. They'd faced the impossible and emerged victorious, their indomitable spirit shining brighter than any star. As the asterisk Hornet's Nest asterisk sailed into the unknown, Voss knew they were closer than ever to uncovering the truth and maybe finding their place among the stars. In the end, it was anyone's game, but Voss knew one thing for certain: they weren't out of tricks yet. Not by a long shot. The asterisk Hornet's Nest asterisk drifted through the silent aftermath, its hull bruised but still clinging to whatever dignity a ship named after a terrifying insect could muster. Inside, the crew slumped in their seats, a mix of exhaustion and adrenaline making for a potent cocktail of feelings. Captain Voss rubbed his temples, wishing he could rub away the memories of those near-death moments as easily. Blinky broke the silence first, its holographic form flickering with a smug satisfaction. "Well, folks, I'm glad to see we're still not charcoal briquettes floating in space. I'd say that's cause for celebration. Only you, Blinky, would consider this a win," Carter said, shaking his head as he slouched over his console. "I feel like I've aged 50 years in the last hour alone." "Don't worry, Carter," Reyes said, smirking as she ran diagnostic checks. "You still look about 5 years short of decrepit, thanks, Reyes. I'll be sure to put that on my tombstone, Doctor." Lyra Quill pushed her glasses up her nose, her face a mask of exhaustion mixed with a touch of satisfaction. "We've done something remarkable, haven't we? Not every day you send an interstellar signal that makes aliens rethink their life choices." "Yeah, maybe it's a new universal therapy," Voss said, leaning back in his chair. "Next time, maybe we can charge them by the hour." Reyes snorted. "We'd be rich. Assuming currency still exists wherever we end up." "Speaking of which," Carter chimed in, "where the hell are we going now?" Voss stared at the view screen, the stars glinting like a million tiny, indifferent judges. "Anywhere but here is a good start. We've got to ride this victory before those aliens change their minds." "Good plan, Captain," Reyes said, nodding. "We'll run until we run out of running," Carter sighed, running a hand through his hair. "How do we explain all of this back on Earth? Hey, we almost started an intergalactic incident, but don't worry, we kind of fixed it." "Oh, I'm sure they'll be thrilled," Blinky said. "You know how much bureaucrats love surprises that make them question the sanity of their space programs. I've got a feeling that we'll be celebrated," Voss said, stretching his arms, feeling the satisfying cracks of his spine. "And by celebrated, I mean scrutinized until they find a scapegoat, and I'll be damned if I'm wearing those horns." Quill let out a small laugh. "We might end up as heroes, you know. The ones who kept Earth from becoming the next galactic tourist trap. Heroes or troublemakers," Reyes added. "It's a fine line, and I've never been one for balance." "Listen," Voss said, pushing himself to his feet. "I don't know about you all, but I think we deserve a short breather before facing the next set of cosmic headaches." "Breather?" Blinky asked, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Isn't that just code for we don't know what the hell to do next?" "Exactly, Blinky. "You're catching on," Voss replied, grinning. "Can we at least not park next to another death ball?" Carter suggested, his voice tinged with genuine pleading. "Agreed," Reyes added. "I'm tired of dodging comets that think they are the guest of honor at a demolition derby." Voss nodded, surveying his crew with something resembling affection. They'd been through hell and back and probably had a timeshare at this point. "All right, folks, let's set a course for nowhere special and see what trouble we can avoid or invite." It was a testament to their resilience, or possibly their insanity, that they were still standing, still joking, still ready for the next impossible task. The Hornet's Nest was more than a ship. It was a stubborn testament to the human spirit's refusal to roll over and play dead, especially when poked with a big, sharp alien stick. As they cruised through the cosmos, Voss couldn't help but ponder the implications of their recent escapade. They'd opened a door to something bigger, and whether that door led to opportunity or annihilation was still very much up in the air. But that was just another day in the life of Captain Tiberius Voss, professional headache and part-time hero. And if there was anything he knew, it was that there were always more questions than answers, and the universe had a way of laughing at your plans. "Hey, Captain," Reyes said, breaking the contemplative silence. "What do you think those aliens are doing now?" "Probably licking their wounds and regretting their life choices," Voss replied. "Here's hoping they stay in therapy for a while, therapy or not. We've made a mark on them," Quill said, her voice thoughtful. "And maybe, just maybe, they'll think twice before pulling the same stunt again." "And if they don't?" Carter asked, ever the voice of grim reality. "Then we'll cross that exploding bridge when we come to it," Voss said, a devil-may-care grin plastered on his face. As they sailed through the stars, the crew settled into their roles once more, each of them a cog in the battered, barely functioning machine that was the Hornet's Nest. They were far from perfect, but then again, perfection was overrated. What mattered was that they were alive, and more importantly, they were free. Free to chart their own course, to make their own choices, to face whatever unknowns the universe threw at them. And while that might not always be a comforting thought, it was what they had. It was enough. "Blinky," Voss said, breaking the silence once more. "What's on the horizon for us?" "An endless void of possibilities," Captain Blinky replied with its usual sardonic flair. "Or, another alien death squad. Could go either way, great." "Just what I wanted to hear. You're welcome," Blinky said, its digital tone infused with a mock sincerity that was almost human. Voss leaned back, eyes fixed on the endless expanse ahead. It was daunting, sure, but it was also exhilarating. The universe was vast and filled with dangers, but it was also ripe with opportunities for those daring or foolish enough to seize them. And so, the Hornet's Nest and its ragtag crew sailed onward, toward whatever awaited them beyond the stars, their spirits unyielding even in the face of the unknown. Because at the end of the day they were explorers, adventurers, warriors against the odds, and there was always another adventure waiting just over the horizon. "Hey, Captain," Carter said, his voice breaking through Voss's reverie. "Yeah, Carter, next time let's aim for an adventure without a death ball, all right." Voss chuckled, the sound rich with weariness and humor. "I'll see what I can do." But then again, where's the fun in that? And with that, the Hornet's Nest continued its journey, a small, defiant beacon in the vast, indifferent darkness of space. Because no matter how grim the universe was, no matter how many dangers lurked in the shadows, there was always hope, even if that hope came with a side of snark and a generous helping of chaos.